Hello and welcome back. This is part 3 of a multi-part series on building a data strategy. So if you remember from the last part, we built out this diagram here. This is based off our release 1 use case. So we cloned the diagram for release 2, yet the elements are still part of the release 1 building blocks. And as we get into solutioning, we're going to version the impacted applications so that we can drive this project. However, this episode is on reusing assets to show how you can bring in your building blocks. In the last episode, we used Native XML, Sparx XMI, to bring these in. So this was our original building blocks we brought in from release 1 using XMI, Native XML, I should be specific. And we then cloned to build out this view. So how do you want to bring in your reusable assets? Let's talk about that next. To demonstrate this, we're going to start with a blank project, and at the root folder called model, we're going to hit Control, Alt, and I to import packages from Native X or XMI file. We're going to hit Browse, and then we're going to choose e-commerce building blocks and hit open. We are going to strip GUIDs because further to demonstration, we're going to be using global unique IDs out of our reusable asset service, and that's going to be the actual one. So we're going to strip GUIDs here for this demonstration. I'm not going to baseline, normally you would, and we're going to hit import. So it brought them in that fast under a package, close, be called e-commerce building blocks. We can open it up and we can take a look. Next, what we're going to do is use RAS, Reusable Asset Service. So we created a package in here called Reusable Asset Service. We're going to go to Publish, RAS, Reusable Assets, right? And then we're going to browse. I only have one repository, and we're going to go down to the Asset Repository Storage area. And we're just going to bring in core diagrams, and we can go to content and we can look at core diagrams. Yep, this is what we want to bring in. So let's just bring them all in, and we're going to go ahead. We're on the package we want to target, import package and dependencies. Here we go. Yes, it's going to overwrite if you already did this before, any of those elements based off their global unique IDs. So it's gone out there and it's bringing these in, and there we go. It is done, right? So we can go down to our core diagrams, open those up, and double check what we want to see. In this particular case, when it was stored, it had receptions turned on. We can certainly go to elements and turn that off, and there we go. So reset everything the way it was. And that's using Reusable Asset Service to bring your models in. Now, the benefits of this is that you're maintaining more accurate versions. You're using the global unique IDs, and you're able to version accordingly and actually move and manage between versions if they're available. For example, if we look at any particular area, we're going to be focused on data science architecture, but data warehouse, the elements that are in there, we've got a class element, machine learning AI, and what other class element do we have? I think that's it. Let's see here, I'm all the way down at the bottom. It's a customer facing. Here's our e-commerce site. There's nothing in the logical diagram. I know that because I already looked. And you'll notice the global unique ID for this element is maintained. So when I bring it in to the model right here, remember it's 58F on the e-commerce site. So I go here to this element for e-commerce, and I'm looking at properties, and I go down here, the global unique ID, move this out, is 58F, right? So it maintains the GUID, the global unique ID. And the reason I stripped GUIDs before on the previous model down here, let's go to building blocks that the GUID, it ends in a different number here, right? 94B, I believe that's what that is. So you strip the GUIDs if you want to maintain completely separate instances. When you're cloning, you're stripping the GUID. When you're importing via XMI, you certainly have the opportunity to strip GUIDs. I've shown you that before. Right here, you can strip GUIDs to change the GUID from the original source. So that's the second way. So this one was XMI, native XML is what it was. And then this one was using RAS. Next, we're going to bring over assets using a script that we wrote that is going to go out and mine our data, right? So from here, we can right click, go to specialize and choose scripts. Extract by object ID is the script. And it popped up over my other window. We get a dialog box that we programmed where you're going to key in an object ID or whatever relevant ID brings in that information. But first, let's switch over to our asset repository and look at those asset or those object IDs. All right, we're over in our asset repository. We're going to go to search, and then we're going to go model, and then we're going to look for my searches because this is a custom SQL. And we're going to go down to, I'm in my searches. We are going to go to all assets. Here we go, solution, all assets. Let me go ahead and open the script up. So it's pretty simple. I've showed this in the episode where we created this for model views. And this basically goes to the TObject table and the TObject property table because we also want to include tag values, right? So you can pause and reuse that if you want. Go ahead and minimize that. Let's go ahead and run it. Now we're in the asset repository mining this data, and the script was written for object ID as the key value. Typically, I don't do that. This is for this demo. Typically, I use a tag value for asset ID. So the asset ID for this particular architecture, this application is 10, right? And I work for companies that have thousands of assets. So you'll have a unique numerical or alphanumerical reference, and that's the best way to manage. Other companies use alias for the asset ID. They either put a numerical value in there or AID colon or whatever their convention is, right? But for this demonstration, because it's simplest, is to use the object ID that we're going to be going for. So let's pick something, CRM 67, and let's switch back over to our project and run this script. Hopefully it works. All right, we're back over in the test project for this demonstration. We're using scripts. We're in the namespace for using scripts, and was it again? It was 67, right? So not 57, 67. And we're going to hit OK. And it went out that fast. Let's go ahead and open the diagram and dump it in. So here it is as a link. And there, let's open up properties. And we brought over this asset from the asset repository SQL database. All right. Now it created it as new. Therefore, it is going to have its own global unique ID, right? So you can see here GUID, it has its own GUID for this element. And I can run this as much as I want. Right click again, run scripts, extract by object ID. The window popped up over here again. And we want to put in 67. And there we go. We have another CRM. All right. So bring in this one. There we go. And I can keep bringing them in. That's a problem with using this, but there's a lot of times where you want to create different instances of an element. This is creating a class element that you want to talk about for different perspectives. All right, let's talk about the pros and cons of using any of these three methods. All right. So the first one was Sparx Native XML. And the benefits or the pros of this one is that it's very portable and lightweight. It is constrained in the sense that it is portable and lightweight, meaning that as you're moving the file around, things can happen to it. So version control becomes a major issue, but it's the fastest way, and it's the way that I like to use in importing my models or exchanging my models between projects, because I understand where the original source was exported from. All right. So a con is the fact that you're up to trusting whoever exported the file, when it was exported, the convention, the naming convention that we used, and so on. Right. Another con is that you lose the ability during exchange to effectively version the elements within the model. You can version the elements, but if you're using a naming convention like date and time, that, well, okay, here's this file, it was just managed and it was export, and now we need to import it in. Although, do I trust the originating source that it came from to reuse in the project that I'm importing to? The next is Reusable Asset Service. And when we're looking at these elements for RAS, that this is the best way to manage versions, be consistent between particular versions, understand and collaborate within RAS on what's going on in a particular model. So this is the recommended approach for managing, importing, exchanging your model intelligence between specific projects. All right. So it's not necessarily the fastest. Not everyone has access to Reusable Asset Service or RAS. It's more complicated to implement in small shops, and they will usually go with a flat file system and use their Git repository or their document management repository for managing these XML files. So I'll leave it up to you on what you want to do. And then the last one we looked at was actually using a script to go out using SQL to a specific SQL instance, whether it's your asset repository, and it should be, or it is another SQL instance where you want to get the data from that project SQL instance and reuse the elements, in this case, class elements. That's how the script was written, to bring these elements in. All right. So the pros is that it's extremely fast. The cons is that unless you program it to bring in connections, you're going to lose the associations, the data relevance, both horizontally and vertically, between the elements that you're importing. So it's up to the script that you write on what intelligence you bring in. In this case, we're bringing in all of the nodes. However, the script was written where it does not bring in any tag values. And the tag values are the most important thing to me in extending your class elements in UML and for other understanding in the model as it's moving through its various life cycles. What I tend to do is use my reusable asset service. So we go back over to publish, RAS, login, and then go down to the particular storage area where reusable assets are. I will bring this in to a separate project like this, and then I will look at where each one of these elements is. I have namespace turned on in this particular case. You go to diagram, I have namespace, so I understand where each one of these elements is within the folder structure, the dependent folder structure that was brought in from RAS. And then from there, I'm able to move the elements into their own diagram namespace, create a package that then looks like this, and then I can export that via native XML to be lightweight and portable for those that don't have access to my RAS instance or my SQL asset repository. So it becomes very easy to maintain the relevance both horizontally and vertically between your assets when you're reusing and managing those assets across your project delivery. All right, we're going to wrap up here. In our next episode, we're going to get into patterns, which is going to be fun, and data architecture approaches. We are going to start actually cloning these as new versions for that demonstration and talking a lot about gap analysis, specification manager, drawing relevance between our requirements and our architecture components, and much more. All right. So I look forward to getting into that part. Now we're getting into the weeds of solutioning around architecture and delivering what your client stakeholders desire. So until that next episode, happy modeling.